I'm Scott. I'm a Quiet Place fan.
Hi, I'm Senthil, and I'm a Bird Box fan.
So the two of us have decided, since we disagree, we're going to start watching as many horror movies as we can and come up with a new way of rate them. Come join us. Hey, good afternoon, Synthil. It's good to see you again.
Good afternoon. Good to see you too.
Synthil, I'm really excited by this movie. The last time we talked, we discussed a movie called Ruin Me, and we were talking about how you can make a great film with a micro budget. I think we found another a piece of gold hidden in the hay here with They Reach.
I agree. And what's fascinating is we're finding these purely by accident and not by intent. So
Yes.
I'm hoping that at the end of this journey or further down the line, we have a better way of discovering movies like They Reach and Ruin Me by intent and not by accident.
So, Senthil, what I'm really excited to talk about this one for is that it's actually filmed locally.
Wow.
So the director's name is Silas Dahl. He was born and raised here in Tacoma, Washington, and currently lives in Puyallup. But
Wow.
the entire film was filmed in Yelm, Washington,
Wow.
in 2020. I mean, it's obviously very cool for me anyway that
Yeah,
we've
it's
got a
local.
director right here, especially with the film that I love. Now, I reached out to this director, and guess what? He's willing to get on the show and talk with us a little bit later.
That would be awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. So, Synthil, give me your feedback on They Reach.
And one thing we didn't talk about for Ruin Me that was effective and also effective in They Reach is the pacing. That's one of the things that struck me. The movie kept moving. There was no slow points. There was no drag in the plot. They get right to the heart of the matter, and it was very quick in both cases. So I didn't feel like I was forcing myself to watch. I really enjoyed it. The concept was different. The performances were fairly convincing. Clearly, probably a lot of new actors, but they did a great job of selling the concept.
I agree. So for me, I was totally on board from almost the beginning. When she enters the antique store, I'm in. And I love the dynamics between her and her parents. I thought that was great. The characters on this, I would say, were just a little weaker than the characters in Ruin Me.
Yeah.
But it didn't distract from the film for me, right? To me, I felt like these were new actors and actresses that were trying to get their feet underneath them, but it didn't distract at all from the movie. Even my daughter, who was watching it with me, said, "Hey, this is a fun film. This was a fun film to watch." I'm curious with you though. Unlike Ruin Me, this one does have a little bit more of the gore factor to it, and I have to tell you, I thought they did a good job with it because it was, the blood splat. They didn't have the funding to do like, oh, I'm going to show all of this happening live on screen. They got it. The director got it. The cast got it. And they used, again, this is another one of those movies, Synthil, and I get excited by this. They understood their budget and spent, I thought, every dime well.
And they were creative in cinematography. The director did a great job in how they in shot selection, which is again unusual for us to talk about because it's not something that we really focus on. But when you mention the practical effects, the gore factor,
yes,
the lighting made it so that you didn't have to have really perfect, visual effects. And the fact that you're mostly in the dark in many of those kind of shots with the mother,
yes,
and with the basement shots, were very effective in enhancing the scare factor and telling you something is really off. So great job of how they utilize their funds.
Well, the other thing I loved about this film, and I will say I loved about Ruin Me too, is they caught the little bits of humor and used it well through the storyline, right? So the police officers guarding the house, I thought was hilarious. I mean, I got a couple of really good chuckles out of this.
That's an unusual aspect of this movie because I did not look for any comedy in this movie.
Yes.
But the director managed to include comedy and the scare factor, and the music. I would say kind of reminded me also of my reaction to Ruin Me, in that they did a great job of using the music to enhance the fear factor and the tension.
I had a very Stranger Things 1970 instead of Stranger Things 1980.
Yeah.
And I thought they played up the night. I mean, even when they come out and they're looking at the house and it had all the green shag carpet and it had the old sandstone fireplace in there, that screamed 70s. And that's tough to do, Senthil, with a very low budget and not a lot to work with to create a feeling that you brought me back to the 1970s, even the cars that they were driving.
I'd love to know more about exactly where in Yelm they filmed and how they
Yeah.
found the houses to film in. If you had to go to your friend who's kind of a mild horror fan, how would you summarize your emotional reaction to this and why they should watch it?
So for me, the reason you should watch it is it's got an unexpected ending, which I did not see coming. And I thought the hints that this film gave through running, I should have caught them, but I didn't, because there's plenty of little hints that the director gives that, in order for this ending to take place, these things take place. So that's one for me. Two, for the budget that they had to do this film, it was fun. I didn't find myself fast forwarding the film. I didn't stop the film and go, oh my gosh, I can't finish this in one setting. I got to go. I'm going to stop. And I was captivated right from the beginning, Senthil. And that is difficult to say with micro horror films. You and I have talked a lot about these films that are micro horror. And we've found some winners, like 24 hours, Open 24 Hours was really well done. You've got a limited set, you've got a limited budget, but some people, some directors, I'm not sure if it's just because they're so focused on the movie that money slips away and they go, oh my gosh, we spent it all. These last two ruined me, and this one, I would tell people to watch it just because this is how a micro budget film can be successful. And between you and me, I'd like to see the next film from Silas Dahl. He hasn't directed anything since this one, but it's 2020. I was impressed.
I was too. Both directors that we've seen recently did a great job of using the creativity and understanding what's really at the core of what's effective in a horror movie. It's not really necessarily effects. It's the psychological tension and terror that you feel in when we first saw the very first Conjuring. That kind of tension, along with a very creative take. I keep thinking of movies like The Sixth Sense, which also at the time came from a fairly relatively unknown director.
Yes, it was.
Who took a creative approach to telling a scary story. And I think this is additional proof that ultimately it's your creativity that makes for success when you're making a low budget horror movie.
Senthil, I agree with that, because I think if you have the right director, and you know what, I don't want to dismiss the writer. I'd actually like to get a couple of writers on the show to talk with us as well as well as the directors, right? Because you have to have a great story, and you have to have a director who can take that story and build it and create. To me, it's really about both of those things, right? You can get away with having actors and actresses who are not well trained and can pick it up. But if you've got a director who sees the vision and understands the budget they have to work with and will take it and use every little penny to do the right thing, and you've got a strong story, which this movie I thought did. Speaking of that, Senthil, one of the scenes that I loved in this, there's a scene where on this abandoned road, and these hands are coming out from underneath the vehicle, right? It's just like this. Look, no budget. We got to do something that looks freaky. Holy crap, that worked for me.
It was. There are many aspects of They Reach that really did build that tension and fear that that we look for in whether it's a large budget movie or a small budget movie. It was very effective for me. Is what I'm trying to say. Absolutely.
So, Senthil, one of the things that I noted from both of these, and the more movies we watch, the more I start to realize this, is that I actually think that when you start getting this larger budget, you start to think that the way to get people to really get involved is adding more gore, more effects, more this, more that. And you watch these young directors who this is their first film working on very little. I'm suddenly looking at some of these big budget horror movies. Have you seen Spiral yet?
No, not yet.
So I mean, so we talked about The Conjuring 3, which I enjoyed, but it took itself too seriously, right?
Yep.
It has this gigantic budget, and so it's trying to go for all of this. I think horror directors should start going back and look at some of these micro budget horror films, Senthil, and regaining a little bit more of that perspective of I don't need full on characters that are these CGI characters. What I need are these slow buildup of tension, this good storyline, and hook me in, get me hooked, and then hit these little points of terror, which I thought both of these films did well. They did a really good job of just grabbing those little moments.
I'm looking forward to talking to the director and hopefully other members of the cast as well. And I'm really fascinated about how we can discover more movies like, They Reach. Because look, the traditional methods we usually find movies is not effective for finding movies like this.
Especially micro budget. And with the way that Amazon and Netflix are trying to build up their catalogs to bring on, for the fight for subscribers, you're seeing a whole lot of movies coming out that are done. But what excites me, Senthil, is we are seeing a whole lot of movies that are being done. Now, 90% of them might not be done as well as they could be done, but we're starting to see that 10%, that cream starting to rise. And I also believe even some of the movies that we've watched that we weren't huge fans of, and you and I talk about this all the time about how much respect I have for directors and the cast, and you do as well. I think if they're given the opportunities to continue, they really will begin to shine as our future horror directors.
I entirely agree. They clearly are demonstrating a lot of creativity. They're not traditional storylines. They're not traditional concepts. And in some cases, they understand that and they do what they can with what they can. Like Velocipaster is a great example.
Yeah.
He knew he had a low budget. He didn't take himself seriously. None of the actors took it seriously, and it's effective for what it is. So I agree. I think along with streaming services like Shudder, giving some of these very low budget creative artists a chance to show what they can do.
And I do want to remind the audience that John Carpenter's first film was a movie called Dark Star, and he used a beach ball as the weird alien creature. And so again, for directors out there who are going, oh, I just can't make it. I disagree. Look, John Carpenter is one of the greats, and he started off with a movie with a beach ball as the weird alien creature. You don't get any more bizarre than that. Senthil, anything else to add?
No, I'm looking forward to talking to the cast and the director and finding more movies like this.
Awesome, Senthil. Well, have a great night, and I'll talk to you next week.
You too.